can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy.
Welcome back to Close to Broke. My name is Kieran, and today we're once again playing that Sunday game that I host here at the Lucky Lady. If you guys are interested in playing, you guys know where to find me every single Sunday at 1 p.m. I'm here. About to head in. It is a rainy day after the weather's been unbelievably great here. So, you know, let's hop into this game. Let's have some fun. Let's splash it up. This game gets pretty big pretty fast, honestly. Not for the most part. We try to keep it friendly, but you can't keep the gamble out of people. That's just the truth. Outside of that, let's hop in and enjoy a session of poker.
As you folks can hear from the intro, I'm giddy and excited to get into today's session. Sure, this may not be the largest stakes you'll ever see me play. I can promise you it won't be. What it is super ridiculous. This session does not come with the lack of ridiculous hands. Let me tell you, the biggest cooler of my entire life by a freaking mile happens in this episode. It does. So, without further ado, let's hop into today's session. Remember, you guys can always join the session every single Sunday at 1 p.m. I vlog this. You guys will be in the vlog. Stop by at the Lucky Lady Casino. Outside of that, the very first hand of the session is a fun one. When the button opens to 20, the small blind calls to 20, and I find myself in the straddle, or the big blind, I should say, with ace-queen off. I decide to raise it up here to $80. The button folds and the small blind calls. The flop comes out 5-3-3 with 2 diamonds and a heart. At this point, the small blind decides to throw out a little lead here, a little feeler bet for 100, considering there's already about 180 in the pot, and my opponent has about 180 behind. Seems like it's fade. I should at least call one time. I decide to make the float here, and the turn card comes out the 8 of hearts, bringing a backdoor flush draw as well. At this point, my opponent decides to slow down. I think at this point, it's clear that my opponent was just trying to probe bet. That's the language I'm trying to speak. I don't think there's any point in doing anything outside of at least just checking it back and realizing some equity. All that being said, the river card comes out a jack of clubs. Not great, as it does end up bringing in some of the hands that I was worried about. The flush draws that exist now improve to pairs like ace jack of diamonds, maybe even a hand like jack 10 of diamonds. All that to be said, when the opponent decides to open rip it for 180, I'm not folding right away. Outside of specifically those two holdings, like ace jack of diamonds and jack 10 of diamonds, there's a whole lot of nothing. Just a big fat nothing burger. I decide that it's likely that my opponent either improved to something or is just getting there. I don't know. I just end up making the fold, and my opponent, Julian, ends up showing the ace-5 off. Oh my gosh. We get absolutely stone cold destroyed there. Unfortunate for us, but, you know, we'll live to fight another day. The cutoff here decides to limp. The action's now on me on the button. I look down an ace deuce of clubs. Good enough to isolate. I make it $20 to go. The small blind OMC decides to call. The cutoff calls as well. The flop comes out queen 3-3 with 2 clubs here. We flop ourselves a backdoor gutter ball as well as a nut flush draw. Seems like a good flop to throw out a C bet, which I decide to do. I make it 25. The small blind calls. The cutoff folds. The turn card comes the 9 of hearts. At this point, the opponent checks over to me. Against a player profile like this, I think double barreling is reasonable. They're probably going to consider giving up their middling pairs. They're going to call with all of their top pairs, and again, probably fold most of their floats. I decided to throw out a bet here, looking to get rid of that middling range for $50. I don't really need to go that large. Our opponent eventually decides to make the call here. We're going off to a river without improving. That comes a 4 of diamonds. I think at this point, my opponent seems pretty locked in on calling down with whatever the hand he has. I don't think against this player type, I'm in the situation where I should be, you know, looking to bluff them off top pair holding, queen jack, queen 10, ace queen, all in OMC, just flatting isolation raises out of position. I mean, the list can go on here. It's hard to play a spot like this as a massive bluff here, as again, I just don't think with my player profile, and people know me fairly well as far as it pertains to punting, I don't want to start blasting off here and getting called off by a hand that's never folding. So, or I decide to make the check, and my opponent shows ace high, but an ace high that beats me, ace 10. Yeah, that's not great. It's not great. In this next hand, we look down at ace queen of diamonds here, and I decide to raise it up to $15. The middle position player, the button, the small blind, and the big blind all make the call. We're going several ways off to a flop here. That comes king 3-9 with 2 hearts and a diamond. We do flop ourselves 3/5 of a royal draw, but in reality, not a whole lot much here. With the action checking over to me, I think I have a pretty easy check. Luckily for us, the button checks back. We're going to be realizing some equity, and it's a pretty good turn card as it comes out the queen of spades. We now improve to second pair top kicker, and with the action starting off here, it ends up getting to the big blind, who throws out a lead here for 40 bucks. The big blind is a friend of the vlog and one of my favorite people to play poker with, Mr. Poker Taco. Also goes by Anthony in the comment section. Shout out to him. He throws out a little bit of a feeler bet, feels like, for 40 bones. Action's on me with second pair top kicker. I can never fold here. I make the call. We're going off to a turn card, or a river card, I should say, that comes out the 8 of clubs. At this point, my opponent throws out a bet for 60. I'm a little worried as obviously we don't have the best hand of all time here, but against a gentleman like this, we've got to be a little bit worried, and a little, not worried, I should say, but we've got to have, you know, he may be putting us to the test is what I should be saying, and I just can't allow him to be running over me. So after a bit of thinking, I decided to throw in the old call. And my opponent shows a queen as well, but it's followed with a 3. Queen 3 offsuit is definitely better than ace queen offsuit when it has 2 pairs, so good hand to you, sir. Unfortunately for me, we get destroyed once again. Things are not going well for us to start today's session, but we are here to battle. We're in for like 1,500 or something already. Honestly, I've lost track. But in this next hand, there is some good news. As the cutoff makes it 15, the action folds me in the big blind, and I look down at a beautiful hand, king, queen of spades. I decided to 3-bet here to $50, and my opponent decides to 4-bet to 150. Well, look, that shit is not going to fly, if I'm being honest with you. I've got to set the bar down eventually. We've not been going crazy for the most part, believe it or not. So, with the action now on me, we've got to go for it. If you're ever going to 5-bet as a bluff, king-queen suited, I can promise you is one of the best hands to do it with. So, after a brief moment and a miscalculation of my opponent's stack, I decided to go all in for what I perceive to be as $500. In reality, it's like $800 and some odd dollars, as I've completely miscounted my opponent's stack, as there's quite a few chips of the white color that I don't notice behind his other stack. But it is what it is. I should have done a better job of looking that out. My opponent snap calls with pocket aces. We run it once here. Let's see if we can't catch there. We're going to need a catch up. The flop comes out Jack 8-4 with 2 clubs and a spade. We flop ourselves nothing. It's still king high, but we have 3/5 of a royal. Looking for a turn card that's going to give us some equity. It comes at 8 of hearts. We're dead. River card is a 7 of hearts. We lose a massive pot. Nearly $1,700 going in the opposite direction. Max pain. Too bad. This is not Monday. Damn. Before we click into the next hand, which is probably the entire reason you've decided to watch this video, I've got a couple of things that I think are really important to talk to y'all about. As you folks already know, I host this game here publicly every single week on Sunday at 1 p.m. at the Lucky Lady. If you're interested in playing, you guys can always call the Lucky Lady directly, or you can sign up on Poker Atlas right now. Moving on from that, if you can't play with me because you're not in Southern California, whatever the reason may be, you guys can play with me on the Splash Squads. I play almost every single stake. Hop in. You guys can see that by clicking the link at the top of the description. Also, it is nearing closing time. Just a few weeks left of the WSOP giveaway. You have to be a member for one of them, and then for the other one, you don't have to be. So I'll be giving away 2 seats or 2 packages. One is the channel members. There's not a lot of y'all that are channel members, so you have a really high chance of winning, as well as from the several hundred people that end up submitting videos. There is literally no bad that can come out of it. Just send a video, see what happens. 60 to 90 second long video letting me know why I should choose you. C2bpoker@gmail.com is where you'll be sending it. Outside of that, again, if you guys are interested, I'm going to be hosting this same private game that I host every single week at the Lucky Lady. I'll be hosting it in Vegas. So if you're interested in playing at the Lucky Lady private game, which is 5510, or in Vegas during the WSOP every single weekend, I'll try to be hosting one in Vegas. So if you want to play with me in Vegas in the private game, or want to play with me in LA, text this number right here or DM me on Instagram. It's the only way you'll be able to get in the game. Aside of that, let's get back into today's session because as y'all know, we've got a ridiculous hand to go. Well, let's get this show on the road. Why don't we? In this next hand, there's a $10 straddle on, the button limps, the small blind makes it 60, my good friend Logan, and I'm here in the big blind and I look down at pocket eights. Although I'm not a big fan of calling from the blinds, when the small blind isolates, considering I'm in position to the isolator, I feel like it's okay, so I go ahead and make the cold call. Straddler folds and the button comes along. We're going three ways off to a flop that looks pretty good as it comes 10-10 for rainbow. There's actually two clubs out there, definitely not rainbow. And with the action starting off on the small blind, he throws out a c-bet for $60. Action falls over to me. And with somebody behind me to act, I think sometimes we can fold, but in reality, shouldn't be too worried about somebody that's limping from the button. All suited 10s will probably be opening from the button with, you know, anything that's relative, maybe not 10-3 suited, but I doubt 10-3 suited's, you know, limping and then calling to a 6x raise. The button folds, and we're going off to a turn card that is, yeah, it's perfect. Comes the 8 of diamonds. The opponent decides to once again throw out a bet here, not taking his foot off the gas, and making a bet for 105. I now go from hoping and praying that my opponent has a bluff, to hoping and praying that my opponent has a hand like Jack 10, 9 10, King 10, Queen 10, Ace 10, all of the above. So I go ahead and just make the call here, and we're going off to a river card that comes out an Ace of Spades. A little scary as now we lose to a hand like Ace 10, and we now lose to a hand like Pocket Aces. But two hands out of the infinite bunch of hands that my opponent can have. And when my opponent once again goes out for a pretty good bet of 220, I think we have a little bit of a decision. The decision now becomes, how much do we raise to? I think flat calling here would be a massive disservice to how strong my hand is. So after a bit of thinking, I decided to just go all in here for about $650 some odd dollars. My opponent pretty quickly makes the call. I feel great about it. Once again, we're not really worried about much here until my opponent shows quads. Logan, this son of a gun, shows pocket 10s here. And yeah, that was an action turn card of all action turn cards. Really painful is an understatement, but man, oh man, that's woo, that was gnarly. I can't even hold you guys. That was a tough one. I can only remember one hand that I've ever been a part of that's been as disgusting. But hey, it was in the 2-5 game against, you know, pretty much my brother. So, it could be worse. I could be losing this to a, you know, somebody that's going to hit and run, right? But that was a tough pill to swallow, y'all. It really was. By this point, I'm reduced to fumes. This session has been quite the painful one. I'm into the game for 2,500 at this point, and I've only got about 200 sitting in front of me. Luckily for me, if there's ever a game that we can find a spin-up story, this would be the one. At this point, there's a $20 double straddle on by Poker Taco. Middle position cutoff, or I should say middle position decides to limp it, and I'm in the cutoff, and I look down at pocket deuces. Well, you know what they say, the old saying goes, deuces never loses. I decided to go all in here, looking to attack this free money. If I, you know, take this pot down and get nobody to fight back, I increase my stack by well over 20%. I go all in for 195, and the straddle, or the double straddle I should say, Poker Taco decides to make the call. The cutoff eventually folds, and we're going off to one board with almost $500 in the middle, looking to hit, and the flop comes just at Ace 7 Deuce here. We show our hand immediately. The turn card is a 4 of hearts, and the river gives us a boat, coming the Ace of Spades. Poker Taco was giving us some good action there with Queen High. Happy to take it. Shout out to my brother there. Whew. Well, the comeback has to start at some point, and with some hand. And maybe this was just that hand. This next hand is a double board bomb pot that I'm just going to graze over quickly. $10, 8 ways, $80 in total to a flops that come out King, Queen, Jack on one board and King, 4 Deuce on the other board. I flop top 2 pair on both boards, and we end up getting it 3-way all in against Poker Taco, Mr. Anthony, and Jay, someone new that we met today in the session. And long story short, we end up improving to a boat on one board, and the flush gets there on the other one. Again, not the best situation as we end up chopping the pot against somebody that had the flush, but Considering just 2 seconds ago we were at about $200, we're over $500 now. Things are trekking along in the right direction. Let's go. There's a $10 straddle out there, and we look down at pocket queens, pocket ladies. Alrighty, I decided to raise it up to 30. There's 4 frickin' callers. God darn it, what the heck is going on? Luckily for me, I was praying, hoping somebody please squeeze so I go all in. And yes, our brother does not let us down. Logan decides to squeeze it up here from the straddle to $220. Action's now on me. With about 600 in my stack, oh, Lord knows I'm going in all the way. There's nothing that can stop me. I go all in for about $600. Action folds back to Logan, who doesn't snap call, but eventually does, which makes me feel even better about my hand. And even more so when he says that he does not have a pair. Looks like we're in a good old-fashioned race. We're running out 2 boards here against Ace King, and the first board comes out Jack 9-4, turn Deuce River 9. We hold. It's always good to win the first one. The second board comes out King High. Oh no. Turn is a 5 of hearts, and the river is an ace of clubs to rub salt in the wound. Look, happy obviously that I didn't take all of my money from my brother here, even though he did that to me earlier. But honestly, guys, we needed it. We needed that one to put us in the right direction. But nonetheless, like I mentioned, looking, or at least things are trending in the right way. Feels like just moments ago, we would have got destroyed and lost both boards there. Wrapping up our session with the final hand of note. The straddle is on to $10. The cutoff makes it $30 to go. The small blind makes a call, and I'm here in the big blind, and we look down at King 8 suited. We're stuck too much in this game to be folding suited broadways or suited cards that contain 1 Broadway. I make the call for 30. The straddler calls as well. We're going 4 ways off to a flop here that comes pretty solid. King 10 4 with 2 spades and a club. We flop ourselves top pair, and when the action gets checked around, we're pretty confident in our holding. Especially when the turn card comes out the 5 of hearts, changing literally nothing to this board. Outside of pocket 5s that improve and maybe a hand like 4 or 5 suited, feels like if we were ahead on the flop, we're darn near for sure ahead on this turn. I bet out for value. I make it $60 to go, going a little bit on the bigger size here for about half the size of the pot. Folds back to the small blind, who eventually decides to throw in the call. We're going off to a river card that comes out the 3 of clubs. Not a whole lot really gets there, so I think we have a pretty clear spot to go for thin value here. I decided to throw out a bet, a pretty small one at that, for 75. Looking to target all inferior kings, although there's not a lot of them. My opponent thinks about it for quite some time and lets me know that he has a pretty crummy hand. After quite some thinking, I say, hey, I can show you 1 card, and I show him the 8 of diamonds. Seems like a good card to show as it's so unbelievably random. It should not at all really interact with the holding that my opponent could probably put me on. He thinks about it for a little longer, but eventually decides that his 3 deuce is not good enough to call. We end up taking the last hand of the session, and luckily brings us back a little closer to even, although we were quite far from that number. But I'm going to throw it over to me now in person to see how we feel at the end of today's session. Things did not turn out in our favor. Granted, it wasn't all that bad. We ended up turning things around there towards the end of the session. Let me know, what is the sickest bad beat you guys have ever had that didn't qualify for a jackpot? I think that's important. Quads over top boat or whatever it was. Feels pretty gross, pretty dirty, as I've talked about quite a bit. If you guys are ever interested in playing, Sunday, 1 o'clock, be there, be square, sign up on Poker Atlas today. Outside of that, we were into the game for $2,500 and we were out for $1,220, which is I don't know, what is that, $1,280 loss or something like that. Many more sessions to come. The whole year can expect it from us. Aside of that, not a whole lot more to talk about. I appreciate it so much. You guys constantly come out and support these vlogs. I'd like to see the channel continue to grow. So if you haven't done so already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to share this video with a friend. It goes such a long way in helping this community continue to grow. Once again, I will see you all very soon. And for a very select few of you, it'd be my honor to have you and to host you. But seeing you guys in person for the WSOP giveaway, as we talked about before. Outside of that, you guys can always cash me on the felt. I'll see you guys very soon. But until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and more importantly, y'all, don't get to the tables. Deuces.
Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy.